Blues, Kraken, Panthers, Bruins, Blackhawks, and Utah Hockey Club. Guys, Puck Time is back. NHL's back. Welcome in to WagerTalk TV. Andrew and Carmine here with you, and it feels good to be back on the show. We got 3 games today, all staggered, and we're going to break down all 3 of them. Carmine, good morning to you. 3 games today, man. We're going to start things off, of course, with the Utah early game. How are you, man? Hockey's back.
Hockey is back. Hockey is actually over as well too. If you're a Sabres fan like I am, we're already 0-2 to start the season. We're looking forward to that first pick in the draft. Andrew, it's going to be an interesting season. Thank you for everyone who's jumping into the chat. We love you guys. All the regular names in there, and for you new guys, stick around. Pick up some content here. Hit that like button. And we're going to try and break down these games. Obviously, I have to believe the first week to 2 weeks. I always talk about the cautious approach. All we have is preseason data and expanded rosters. With those, you just don't get what you're supposed to be getting out of the preseason, other than a few injuries already this year. Andrew, your team has suffered some of those injuries. So we're going to go off of some numbers from last year. We'll talk about some changes to teams' lineups, at least the first couple of weeks. Next week, our format will change a little bit, and you guys, I think, will like it. Tomorrow, it's just Andrew and I. Buster is back in Mexico, but the weather, as you guys know, is wreaking havoc. So if you guys are in that Florida area, please stay safe. Over the next 3 or 4 days, Buster will be on Friday. Brian Leonard will be back next week, but sitting in his spot on Thursday will be the Prez. And any show with the Prez is always entertaining. Andrew, first game, 4:30 today. You said it. Staggered games. We've got the Blues and the Kraken, followed by the banner raising in Florida, and they welcome the Boston Bruins to town. And then we finish it off, as you mentioned, with not a new franchise, but a new team rebranded and in Utah. We'll find out about what their name is next season, but they're going to go by the Utah Hockey Club. It's a little weird, kind of like the Washington football team playing the Chicago Blackhawks. So let's get going. Andrew, Blues Seattle. I talked about this one yesterday on Puck Time, and I gave the Kraken as a play, and I told people this would be a client play. It's up on the WagerTalk free play section as a free play as well too. Again, guys, we're going to be looking at goalies, and it's interesting. But I'm sure we're going to get Grubauer here and Binnington. We might get some different goalies in the second game we're going to discuss, Andrew. But I go back to where I rate these teams, power ratings coming into the season, how I think they're going to do. Blues are a team that, and you and I discussed yesterday, I don't think that they are a top 8 team in the West. They may be one of the teams that's battling for a playoff spot along with Seattle, but I think Seattle has more upside right now. Brand new coach, Dan Bylsma, former Penn coach, as Andrew will tell you. And Shane Wright, we get to see him for a full season on this team. They added from Florida, Brandon Montour. Anytime you win a cup, you're going to lose some players because those free agents are going to want some money. Brandon Montour here on the blue line, going to help that power play. And then you're looking at guys who are supposed to bounce back, or you hope they bounce back. Former Calder winner from 2 years ago, had a bad season last year, Matty Beniers. I think he improves, and they got some other talent on that team. Andrew, it is weird for the Seattle team, and I'm going to say this, and then you can tell me what your thoughts are on this. Seattle's still trying to get their feet in that Seattle market. They have a good fan base. They were there. They supported the team in that first season, which was a brutal one, and Seattle repaid them. The Kraken repaid them by making the playoffs 2 years ago, knocking off the Colorado Avalanche along the way. And then last year, another down year. I don't think they can afford back-to-back down years. I think this has to be a good season for them. They bring up, as I mentioned, new coach from Coachella, their AHL team, Dan Bylsma, and he's very good at developing talent. And there's some young talent on this team. I think he can get them there. Out of the gates, the only team I can really take here is the Kraken. The only problem is I think the value is gone. The value is on that 135 and 140 that was available yesterday. It's at 150 and 155. I'm having a look at the Wager Talk live lines right now for this game, Andrew, and I'm seeing 148 is the lowest, and that's at Circa. Caesars has 130. I think that's a bad line from them, and I don't think you can actually get that from them. 148 to 150 seems to be the right price, and bookmakers up to 154 now. But it's still the Kraken for me in this game. That's the side I favor in this one in the early 4:30 afternoon game. What are your thoughts, Andrew?
My thoughts are it feels good to be back, Carmen. It feels good to have the chat room absolutely bumping right now. So we appreciate all of you guys for being here with us. And we care about what you guys have to say as well. So make sure you're typing in the chat or commenting after what your picks are on these games. Carm, my issue with the St. Louis Blues isn't as much their offense as it is their defense. They pick up Dylan Holloway in an offer sheet with Edmonton, which I absolutely love to see. They've got Robert Thomas. They've got Jordan Kyrou. But the issue I have with the St. Louis Blues are their defensive pairings. Nick Leddy and Colton Parayko, I don't think that's a top pairing defensive line in the NHL anymore. Philip Broberg, Justin Falk on the second pairing, and of course, Ryan Suter and Matthew Kessel are the third pairing defensemen. I think that's very weak. I feel like those guys will not have the speed to keep up with the guys like Beniers, like Chandler Stevenson, and some of these top goal scorers for the Seattle Kraken. And one thing about this Kraken team that I like, Carm, they don't necessarily have the players that are going to, absolutely blow you away with the highlight goals. But they have guys on all three lines that are going to be able to make plays. And that's a dangerous thing. You talk about Shane Wright. There was a point in time everyone thought he was a surefire number 1 overall pick. If you want to tell me that guy doesn't have a chip on his shoulder, he definitely does, And I love that you keep bringing him up, Carm, because he is going to have a chip on his shoulder. And you're right about Dan Bylsma. I love when teams promote within, especially with teams that have a lot younger players. Who knows Dan Bylsma? Shane Wright knows him. Some of the younger players, they know him. So, Carm, I'm going to pick things up where I left off last season. I'm not going to do these probably as much as I did. I'm going to pick and choose my spots to do this. But I think this is a very appropriate time to play the team total at plus 115, plus 120. I'm not sure if this will make my client card or not. But as you mentioned, the number has moved drastically on the money line. Right now, from the places that I'm looking at, the movement it's been too much. And so I'm not sure if I'm willing to lay that number in the opening night, despite what Ralph Michaels has told us, though, because he just did give us a note earlier today about how strongly these teams have done in their home openers in the first game of the season. I'm not willing to lay that number on the Kraken in game number 1 of the season, but I do think they reach 4 goals on the Blues. Plus 115 is the price I like there. We'll take the Kraken team total up and over there.
Andrew, the concern always is, listen, we want to come out of the gate. We want to tell you, oh, this is the play. You've got to take this play. But it's the first week of the NHL season. And again, you can't extract anything, I think, any of the statistics of what happens in the preseason, because a lot of the stars aren't playing. They aren't getting the ice time. You got new guys playing together for the first time. You've got backup goalies in goal, goalies being switched after 20 minutes. And we still ended up with injuries. It's like the NFL all over again. Each week, the NFL, that's all you see is a long list of who's not playing this week. Don't want to see that in the NHL. I tweeted about if these guys keep going down in the NHL in an 82 game season, that we could start seeing load management at some point, where guys in a heavy schedule of 3 games in 4 nights, or 4 games in 7 nights, where some guys are healthy scratches. You don't want to see it, but a team does not want to lose their season because their stars go down. Every single sport has this right now, where it is a money thing. They just pack in the games. They pack in competitions. Like I'm talking about soccer as well too, and the player safety is at risk. And as an outsider looking in, we can just say, listen, you're getting paid 40 million. Go out there and play until the guy gets injured. And then you're blaming the organization, you're blaming the coach or what have you.
Right.
So, we'll see what happens here, but you can't put much stock in the preseason. You look at like a team like Chicago. Okay, I get Chicago Blackhawks are a little bit better this year. They're not going to contend for a playoff spot, but they went 1-5 in the preseason and were lit up in a lot of those games. The Utah Hockey Club went like 5-2, and averaged 3.3 goals, I think, in those games. But does that mean that carries over? We shall see. Again, when you look at Utah, just remember it is the Arizona Coyotes. That's who they are. They just have new jerseys on and a couple additions to the lineup. But I'm looking forward to it, Andrew. To your point, or my point to the St. Louis Blues. What was it? Drew Bannister. Drew Bannister came in last year for this team when they were struggling. They fire their coach. He goes 30-19-4 or 30-19-5. Correction there. Great record for a coach coming in, but they didn't make the playoffs. And their analytic numbers were pretty much the same during that 54-game span that he took over for them as the interim coach and what they did in the 28 previous games. So did he make them better? They had a better record, but did he make them better? Making them better is your power play gets better, your expected goals get better, your saves above expectancy for your goalies gets better as well too. It is a complete thing. And did he make them better? I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's another season in which the Blues likely miss the playoffs. And if you know the St. Louis Blues and you're a St. Louis Blues fan, you're used to your team not going through long stretches like the Buffalo Sabres. I'm going to keep mentioning my Sabres because they're great to be pound on that team for what they do wrong. But St. Louis is a team, Andrew, that doesn't go many years without missing the playoffs. I think it's 2 or 3 years at most, and they're in the playoffs. So they never have that long skid of games or long skid of seasons where they fail to make the playoffs.
The one good thing about them is their forward group is young, Carm. I'm just picking on their defensive group being a little bit older, but their forward group is young. So like you said, if it's not a great year for them this year, the future can be bright and there's still a lot of chances for them. Watch out for Holloway too. I think he's going to be real strong. If there were 2 players for me to watch in that game, it would be Shane Wright for the Kraken and it would be Holloway for the St. Louis Blues. So I'm looking forward to that. Guys, $5 Tuesdays over at WagerTalk.com. No more $2 Tuesday. Every capper gets a chance to have one play up in any sport of their choice for just $5. You get a play from myself, you get a play from Carmine. It could be today, could be tomorrow, could be on Saturday, could be on Sunday in the NFL. Just $5 for those plays. And we also have a coupon code for the NHL to give you guys a little bit later into the show. But Carm, I know you're interested in this next game because you have a stat for us. But this is the game of the night. This has to be the game of the night. The defending Stanley Cup champions. It's banner night. The Florida Panthers, they got their rings last night, Carm. Will they get the win tonight as they play hosts to the Boston Bruins? What are your thoughts here on this one? Panthers short favorites, total at 5.5.
Andrew, first of all, I'm going to mention the stat because we always talk about your teams raising the banner. You're distracted. You're distracted as a team. You're emotional. Players are getting their Stanley Cup rings. How do these teams perform in those games in which they raise the banner? Well, here's a stat for you. Since 1979, teams raising the banner have gone 26, 13, and 4. That is almost a 66% clip in winning those games. If you look at sort of the recent ones, you look at the Vegas Golden Knights. Last year raised the banner after winning the cup. They play the Seattle Kraken. They beat them 4-1. The last sort of hangover, if you even want to call it, and I don't want to call it that, is the 2021-22 season. Tampa Bay raises the banner, and this was a wild game. I think if you go back and you try and find the box score for this one, Pittsburgh beat Tampa Bay 6-2. If you had the under in that game, you're probably throwing up still, because I think Tampa pulled their goalie on 3 separate occasions in that, with about 8 or 9 minutes left, scored a goal, had an empty netter scored against them, scored a goal, had an empty net scored against them. Absolutely insane, if I remember correctly. And then Tampa also lost to Chicago 5-1, but that wasn't a banner raising. Sorry, that wasn't a banner raising. Sorry, my pets are making a little bit of noise in the background. If you hear some screeching bird, it's kind of like Brian's cat. But with that said, um, they did lose to Chicago, but they never raised the banner on that night. They put it up. They had it covered up because that was during the COVID period where there was no fans allowed in the stadium. They did then play against Nashville, raise the banner on that night, and won the game. So 26-13-4, if you're looking for a stat on teams, how they do when they raise the banner. Now, Andrew, we talked about the Bruins goaltending. It's showing right now expected. Jerry Swayman, he just signed his contract. He got his bag of money. What kind of a season is he going to have in Boston? I think there's a little bit of regression. I expected it last year from them after they won the President's Trophy the previous year. They did, but they still finished with 109 points. I think they don't get to 109 points again this year. There's a couple of factors in this one. I get it. The Pasternak all season working on the hip. It's been a problem for him. That is one of those ones that for hockey players, it is a very tricky injury to deal with. He's been working on the weights. He's been on the ice. But in the course of a season, having a hip injury or coming off a hip injury is something delicate that you have to deal with. And then Swayman. Swayman's a guy that was fantastic last season in a dual role with Linus Ullmark, but Ullmark now plays for Ottawa. So now they've got a backup goalie. The number 2 goalie is Korpisalo. So herein lies the problem, Andrew, that I look at on the Bruins, because I want to talk about the Bruins season and then talk about this game, is how does Swayman do in the role where he's the number 1 and is going to have to play about 60 games this season? That is probably the toughest part of that is, this is a guy who was number 5 last season. Swayman was. I think Ullmark was number 11 in goals saved above expectancy. Does he have that type of season this year? Or that remains to be seen. I like Florida in this one, lifting the trophy, best team 5-on-5, best team defensively 5-on-5, and I think that that they get the job done tonight against the Boston Bruins on banner raising night. I'm going to let you take over for a minute while I quiet the household.
Great stuff there, Carmen. Yeah, guys, it's been really successful for these teams that are raising the banners, as much as it seems like it might be a fade spot to go against some of these teams. I guess a lot of times you get that adrenaline, right? You're seeing how much success your team had last year. You're watching these videos on the big screen. You're standing with your teammates by your side, and you're looking at each other saying, hey, we want to do that again. So you can definitely get that momentum boost. But I have 2 plays on this one. One of them is a free play I've been mentioning quite a bit. And I do actually like the underdog here. I like the Bruins side. And one thing about this particular matchup I like is that I like every move that the Bruins made in the offseason. And unfortunately for the Panthers, they had to lose a few guys. Not too many guys, but the thing is, especially in hockey, guys, a lot of the time when a team wins the Stanley Cup, it's because they made some aggressive moves at the trade deadline. They picked up players at the deadline. They have guys on contracts that are expiring, and when they do well in the postseason, they're going to go get paid elsewhere. And that's what happened for a handful of players. And Carm mentioned one of them earlier, and that's Brandon Montour, defenseman for the Florida Panthers, or former defenseman for the Florida Panthers. So when I look at some of the departures for the Florida Panthers, and I look at some of the arrivals for the Boston Bruins, I'm really confident in what they're able to bring to the table. I think Lindholm is great for this Boston Bruins team. I think Zadorov is great for the Boston Bruins. When you look at the Boston Bruins defensive core, Charlie Coyle was quoted saying that he never thought he would be the smallest defenseman on his team, whether it be actual stature, whether it be in height. But Hampus Lindholm, Charlie McAvoy is a dynamite number one defensive pairing. Mason Lohrei is an unbelievable prospect that got a bunch of games last year. He's going to be great this year. And of course, Brandon Carlo. If any team can have Nikita Zadorov on their third pairing defenseman, that is really good. So I know the total's 5.5 here, guys. I wouldn't talk anybody off playing the under in this one. And I do lean towards the underdog in this one. I find that when teams trade for forwards, the chemistry takes time to develop when you trade for a forward. When teams trade for defensemen, I find that they mesh right in and they're able to work immediately with the team. And it's going to be a really scary Boston Bruins blue line. I think the big bad Bruins are back, guys. They're going to be a very physical team. And now that they have some secondary scoring, they lose Jake DeBrusk. We're going to talk about a player prop in this game in just a little while. But I think that this is a team that's live tonight. But I also think the under. Carm, we're head to head on this game sidewise. But do you agree with me that despite it being only 5.5, this could be a tight checking game?
It should be, Andrew. You know, the interesting thing about this, and we're going to be on opposite sides a lot of times during the season. There with so many games, there is that these totals have been, for the most part, trending upwards. You know, the first game we talked about, the St. Louis Seattle game. That game was at 5.5 for the longest time. It is now all the sixes are popping up on the WagerTalk live lines, guys. If you're not using the WagerTalk live lines, you should be. It's free. It's great. You just head over there, click on live lines, click on NHL, and you can see the moves as they are happening. And now, as I say that, every single book across the board on the WagerTalk live lines has gone to 6 on the St. Louis game. And the juice on the Bruins game on the 5.5 has ticked up as well too. So and maybe everyone's expecting some pond hockey right out of the gate, Andrew. We'll see. The one thing about the Boston Bruins is, you know, when I say the Bruins are going to regress, is the Bruins aren't going to regress where they are fighting for a playoff spot or out of a playoff spot, because they always find a way. As you mentioned, Andrew, there is such a good defensive team, but they're going to have to win those 3-2 games, those 3-1 games. And we saw them do a lot of that this season. One thing, and Andrew, I'm giving you full, or Dan, our producer, I'll give Dan, our producer, the full clearance on this one to kick me in the nuts anytime I take the Bruins in regulation time, because I think this is a team that is going to play a high amount of overtime games this season. So taking them in regulation to lower a price that you think is 220 and you'd rather take it at 130 in regulation, I think that is a bad move and something that I won't be doing much or at all this season. I think the Bruins are a good OT team. They got a lot of games to OT last year, and in that season in which they won the President's Trophy. Stay away from those ones. Hey, maybe we see OT tonight, Andrew. And 2-2, what do you want? 2-2, 3-3, heading to OT, and one of us wins?
Well, we don't like to say this, Carm, but let's be honest here. There's 3 games on opening night. One of them's going to overtime. You know, I think one of them will probably end up getting there. So would not shock me if this is the one. That's for sure. And you're right. This is a team that you got to be careful when you're betting these regulations. Remember, Carm, when they had that great streak, as you mentioned, even when their streak got broken, it got broken off of losing in overtime. So they had a regulation winning streak. So this team is really dangerous. And again, guys, be careful when you're betting these money lines. And I guess, Carm, what we will say is, you know, you can pick your spots when to lay chalk. You know, I'm going to be doing that this year, but at the same time as well, you guys have to be cognizant of the fact that your winning percentage changes depending on the vig you're laying on bets. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm a team totals guy. I know every time I take an over 3.5, guys, team total, it's not going to hit. But if you're going to give me plus 120 on every team total I'm taking instead of minus 150, I'll take that all day long and twice on Sunday, because I think that that's going to help me have a longer success rate with the plus money. But as you mentioned, Carm, sometimes the regulation with the teams like the Bruins or the Islanders or teams like that tend to be really tight checking. It can be a lot more difficult. And you know what? I've never been good at betting on these draws. I don't find there's enough value in it in the regular season, but some people are good at betting these overtimes, and we got guys in the chat that love betting the overtime props as well. But that's it for me in that game, Carm.
Yeah. Andrew, it's when we talk about regular, whether it's totals, whether it's regulation betting, you know, I had a long chat this summer in DMs with 2 or 3 of my clients and stuff, and I pretty much I broke down the NHL season for me last year, and there was a couple a couple categories where I'm going to avoid this season. I think the obviously the NHL preseason had a lot of NHL preseason future bets, prop bets, or what have you. Those didn't go well, and they contribute to your whole NHL season, regardless of whether people play them or not. Regulation bets were probably my best. Regulation bets and totals were my 2 highest profit earning ones last season. Remove the props, and now I'm not talking about shot props, player props. I'm talking about, team totals, teams to win the Stanley Cup, just a bunch of ones, teams to win a series in the playoffs. I removed those ones from the equation, and it turns out to be a good year. So it's all about transparency. And I talked to the clients. I broke it down into the categories so they do understand, and they were cool with it. But we're talking about props, and this is where I'm leading with this. It's a tangent, that long road that I finally got there. Guys in the chat, every day of every PuckTime show that is on, Andrew is going to have a new segment where he gives out 2 to 3 player props on that day's card. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be every single day. We're going to have our regular segments once the season is about a month in, where I do the 6 in 60 on Fridays. Andrew does his buy and sell on Mondays. And then one additional segment, which is going to be, I'm working on it behind the scenes, the ladder challenge, a weekly ladder challenge that gets sponsored. And anytime we hit the ladder challenge, actually are successful, it goes to a charity. So, and you guys in the chat will pick which charity it goes to. With that said, Andrew, I'm looking forward to it. Right out of the gate, you have 3 player props, and I want to hear them.
All right, Carm. I'm extremely excited. And again, guys, some of these are going to be shot props. Some of them are going to be point props. Some of them are going to be assist props. We're going to be really mixing it up in this segment. Let's start things off with a player on the Boston Bruins that I expect to take a big step up this season. The Boston Bruins lose Jake DeBrusk, and that means Charlie Coyle has a lot more to offer. And last year, he had a great year. The team relied on him a lot more. They gave him a lot more opportunities. He'll be getting a lot more power play time. Charlie Coyle to record a point at a plus 114 price tag is a really good bet for this Boston Bruins team. Secondary scoring will be very important for them. To get scoring from guys not named Marchand, not named Pasternak will be very important. Charlie Coyle is your guy. And early in the season, guys, I want to bet props at prices that I do not think will be there in a few weeks. I love getting plus money on Coyle to get a point. We'll take that one to start things off. The next one, well, guys, a little bit chalky here. But again, this is a number that will not be there in the future. We're going to take Connor Bedard, Chicago Blackhawks, over 2.5 shots on goal. Again, it's in the minus 160 price range, but this is a guy that will be at over 3.5 shots in a few weeks. We need to take advantage of this 2.5 number. Well, we can. Today, in their matchup against Utah, I expect a ton of shot opportunities for Connor Bedard, especially because now he has a lot more healthy line mates to play with that will help him out in a big, big way. And we're going to take a player prop on the Utah Hockey Club, Dylan Guenther, fresh off signing an 8-year contract. Guenther is a great player for this Utah team. Minus 130 is the player prop here. He's there on the second line for Utah. When they're scoring, he's usually involved. When they need a goal, he's usually their guy, and he's out there on the power play as well. 3 player props for today, guys. Bedard over on shots, Charlie Coyle to get a point, and Dylan Guenther to get a point at -130. That's it for the player props for today, guys. Every single weekday, you can count on me for at least 2 or 3 player props in the NHL. Carm, there we have it.
I like those, Andrew. The interesting one for me is to see what kind of a season Dylan Gunther, because you look at this guy, and I think he played like about 40, I think it was 40, 45, 48 games, something like that last season. But if you look at like shot props for him, specifically, the minute they started to increase his ice time, and I get it, it correlates, more ice time, more opportunities. Early on, the guy was getting either no shots, one shot, maybe a couple shots at best. But he really clicked in the last 20 games. He was like 14-6 to the over in his shot props of 2.5. And he's one of those guys that I think, especially out of the gate, for the first 10 games in Seattle, he becomes a big part of their offense, and he's normally going over that, you're going to see his price is going to be a lot higher, or he's going to be. I don't think he's going to get those 3.5s, but it's kind of like the Connor Bedard one. You're regardless of what the vig is at right now, you're normally not going to see Connor Bedard at 2.5 shot props, because he's the focal point of that team, the focal point of that power play, and you're always going to see 3.5s with him. We saw it late in the season; it seemed to be always 3.5. So I like those ones, Andrew, and we'll see how they do.
All right, let's try and cash those
Cool.
tickets, guys. One last game to break down.
Speaking of Connor Bedard,
yes. Speaking of Connor Bedard,
it's time to talk about that
game. Time to talk about that game Connor Bedard is featured in. And Carm, he's got some healthier line mates around him now. As I mentioned, Taylor Hall finally healthy. Mikheyev is back, Teravainen, and then they trade for Tyler Bertuzzi from the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I feel like having those guys around him will make a major difference. Carm, this is actually a best bet for me today over at WagerTalk, this game, which I'm super excited about. It's not my $5 play, but it's a best bet for me over at WagerTalk. So I will just mention really quickly that I do believe that there's 2 player props I like here. Bedard over 2.5 shots on goal. Dylan Gunther to record a point. I mentioned that in the player prop segment. And I also wouldn't be shocked to see this first period get started with some scoring. And I wouldn't mind looking at Chicago to keep things close early on as well. Potentially look at Chicago to play spoiler in the Utah Hockey Club home opener. But I do have a best bet in this one over at WagerTalk. So what do you have going in this game? Any thoughts?
Yeah, you mentioned it. Like, guys, if you look at I mentioned the live lines before. I'm going to mention it again. I'm going to mention it quite a few times during the season. The money just keeps pouring in on this Utah team. They are up to 170 right now on our live lines. 175 at Caesars. I'm not really sure about that Caesars one. DraftKings has -180 on Utah. It's an insane price out of the gate on day one for 2 teams that did not make the playoffs. And it's just the first game of the season. It's -180. Can I lay -180 on the Utah Hockey Club? No, I cannot. Do I want to take the plus money on Chicago? If this price keeps going up, I may be tempted to do so. It is one of the games, and it's the final game of the night, Andrew. Which, if there's obviously, if you expect scoring, and I seem to, or I do in this one, is where you take the scoring. I'm looking at the lines for the first period over. I just want to get the first period over here. I'm pretty sure it's at 1.5. It's not popping up on my screen, Andrew. I'm not sure if you see it. There it is. 1.5 is -130. I think that's where I'm going to land on this game. Get some scoring out of the gate. It's going to be electric in Utah. It feels weird to even say that, electric in Utah, but that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a great atmosphere there in the last game to close off opening night in North America hockey. Over 1.5 first period, -130. Let's see some early goals, and then maybe I can pack it up and go to sleep. This old man might not be able to last through the whole all 3 games tonight.
And if you could bet on this, Carm, like you used to be able to, I'd be locking in a wager on this one tonight. Good friend of mine, his brother Liam O'Brien. They call him Spicy Tuna. I wouldn't be shocked to see him drop the gloves 1, maybe not 2 times tonight. It's going to be a very physical game. A lot of emotions in this game tonight. We know what happens, guys. Emotions can lead to goals, especially early on. Carm looking at the over 1.5 goals in the first period. A lot more games to break down tomorrow on Puck Time, but just a 3-game slate here today on Tuesday to get things going as the NHL drops the puck in North America for the first time in this regular season. Guys, before we head out, Carm and I have a great promo code for you. PUCK15, PUCK 15 will take $15 off a 7-day NHL pass for both of us. Obviously, that's its own package for each of us. But why buy one? If you're interested in our favorite plays, and we always appreciate you guys tuning in live or afterwards here on Puck Time, but PUCK15 will take $15 off a 7-day NHL package. Carm, if there's nothing else you had to promote, are we all good? All good to pack things up?
We mentioned it's $5 Tuesdays customer appreciation. Those if they're not cards or games that are being played today, that price changes back at midnight. My customer appreciation play is for Sunday's NFL. Last week's was Green Bay -3.5, Andrew's favorite football team. And I have another play up for Sunday. It goes back to regular price at midnight, but inside that play, there's also a coupon for my 5% play on in Sunday's NFL card. So you can pick up 2 deals at the same time. NHL card up for tonight. First week or 2, as I always say, cautious approach, guys. See what's happening on the ice, learn from your mistakes. Our chat is absolutely rocking. Can't wait for the new format to start next week after this weather and the vacations, which are taking their toll on the show this week, are gone. But we love you guys in the chat. So many of you guys sharing information, familiar faces, mentioning of the goldfish shirts you guys wore this season, the Puck Time ones. I'll see if I can get a few together and do some giveaways as well throughout the season for you guys. We absolutely love you guys tuning in each and every week. Hit that like button. If you're watching this after the fact, comment in the comment section below. Let us know who your favorite team is. And hit that subscribe button. I'm going to mention it. We 176,000 subscribers and growing each and every day. The WagerTalk community is huge, and you guys are the biggest part of it. We appreciate you guys tuning in each and every day. So, Andrew, first show back. Your Sabres, my Canadians, neither one of them are making the playoffs. I thought I'd get that out of the way. I did not make fun of the Leafs this
My
whole
Sabres.
show.
My Sabres, no way.
No, my
Sabres.
Sabres, you're Canadians.
Yeah.
You're Canadians, my Sabres. I did not make fun of the Leafs yet because they haven't played a game yet. But anyways, with that said, guys, we will see you tomorrow. It is just Andrew and I again. Don Buster has been bumped to Friday while he tries to find some electricity and dodge those hurricanes that are coming through Mexico and the southern Florida. So guys, stay safe out there if you're in that area, and we will see you tomorrow, 11 a.m. on Puck Time.